can start webinar.
Hello and welcome. I hope everybody can see us.
People are still joining. Can we just give them a couple of minutes?
Yeah,
Yes.
we have people joining now.
Yes, they can see us. I hope everybody's having a good afternoon or evening or morning, depending where you're joining us from. Yes, I see a lot of thumbs up. That's great. We're almost at 80 attendance. So I think we can get started, Angie. What do you think?
I can see still some more still joining.
Yeah.
You can
Yes, there will be a recording after the webinar shared with everyone.
We're almost 100, Laura.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah, I think we can get started. Well, thank
Yeah.
you everyone for joining. We're very, very excited to have this session. We've been looking forward to this for weeks, so it's great to see you all. And I just have one question for you. Are you ready to elevate your case writing skills to participate in ICDC 2024? Yes, no. Well, if you're in this session, is yes, and we are happy to guide you. We have a great panel prepared for you with lots of information to take you to the best shape in case writing possible to get you to the finish line and to help you have a successful participation. So this webinar is titled Case Writing Essentials, Expert Tips and Best Practices. And that is exactly what you are going to get from our panelists. In this session, our Associate Director of Product and Publishing from Ivey Publishing, Violetta Gallagher, will share the essentials of case writing with you. Whether you're a student looking to write cases, as you should, or you're simply interested in the basics for future use. Whatever your case is, Violetta's here with lots of great information to take you there. We also will have you learn about expert insights from industry professionals that we have had experiences with, that we have gathered insights from, strategies to make your cases truly engaging, and of course, details specifically about the International Case Development Competition, which you will need for your submission later on. So now let's give you some details about the competition. It is organized by AUC School of Business, El-Khazindar Business Research and Case Center, and with us, Ivey Publishing, and it will provide students like you an opportunity to showcase your business and management knowledge by crafting compelling case studies focused on contemporary issues in the EMEA region. So this is exactly what you will be able to do after this session. I just a couple more details. The competition is open to undergraduate and graduate students. I know that you have lots of questions in the Q&A box, but that's the main one that you need to know. And eligible students can participate individually or as a team of up to 3 students. If you have any other questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to start typing your questions in the Q&A now, and we will address them at the end. And now I'd like to introduce you to today's panelists. As I said, my colleague Violeta Gallagher, Associate Director of Product and Publishing at Ivey Publishing. She's currently based in London, Canada, where she leads a high-performing team in developing and executing innovative strategies to drive revenue and growth across Ivey products. She is known for her keen focus on building relationships with authors and partners and fostering initiatives and innovation. We also have Angie Mahdi, who is the director of El-Khazindar Business Research and Case Center at AUC. She's a top graduate of business administration from AUC, where she also earned her MBA. And she's now currently pursuing a PhD, so great, impressive. She's doing this at Lancaster University in the UK. And she has over 2 decades of experience in marketing and commerce. She combines academic excellence with her professional expertise, and it's great to have her in this session sharing great knowledge. And now, without further ado, I think we can leave the floor open to Violeta Gallagher, who will start sharing great information with all of us.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Laura. So we'll jump right into it here. And before we even begin to talk about case writing, we need to understand one thing. What are the benefits of learning with cases? So they hold fun and the student interest. They enhance the atmosphere of the classroom through the group learning. They also allow students to participate in their own decision-making skills. So as many of you students have probably already done this. So not only does it test your students' knowledge of what you have learned, but it also assists the professor with gauging the strength of their students' understanding of the topics or theories being discussed. Cases also bridge the gap between theory and practice. So real-life scenarios help students relate better to the issues and task at hand. And students learn to become more competitive and manage uncertainty. They teach our students to become effective and confident and team communicators within a safe learning environment. So think about this as you're thinking about writing your next case. Does it do this? Will it be engaging? Will it be able to perform this? The rest of this, I'm going to kind of take you on a bit of a mini workshop style, just so that you can understand the essentials and the basics in case writing. So we first start with, and this also relates to teaching, and when you're picking up a case as a faculty member, but for students, you need to think about 3 dimensions of difficulty, one of them being conceptual, presentation, and analytical dimensions. So the conceptual dimension here is a way to think about, the analytical dimension. Can you guys see that? Perfect. Sorry, ahead of myself there. So the analytical dimension is, what is the reader's task with respect to the key issue of the case? So how complex is the decision required of the student? Can the case be written with the issue stated, plus the alternatives considered and the decision criteria and the final decision task? What is the student's task at hand? So you need to think of this as well. And is there clarity around the decision point? So clarity for the decision point to be made is just you need to evaluate decision already taken, identify a problem, issue, decision, or opportunity, analyze a problem or an issue, develop criteria, develop and evaluate alternatives. So when thinking about your analytical, what is it? What is the student's task? Next, we think about conceptual. And so many of you are going to start this journey in just writing the case and then later thinking about the teaching note. However, to write a case, you need to think about conceptual frameworks. So one way to, engage in this is maybe think about I'm going to pick a case that we used in our classroom that spoke about X concept, and I'm really interested in writing another alternative to that case or another perspective with a different company or a different situation. So conceptual theories are what theories, concepts, or techniques are being used in understanding or the resolution of that key issues of the case. So how complex are the theories? How complex are the techniques, the concepts that are needed to understand the case and make a decision? Are there one, or is there several? So for example, Porter's 5 forces, or are there more? And how complex are they in and of themselves? And important here to understand is the target audience for the case. So how much theory they're prepared to understand. The number of theories and the concepts should be relevant to the case. You really should not exceed more than 3 theories from a conceptual perspective. So practice existing or previously known concepts. Maybe they're new concepts, but quite simple concepts that require some explanation. So thinking about the theory that the student you will teach within the classroom discussion. And last but not least is the presentation dimension. So what is really important and relevant information presented in the case and what is missing? So how complex is the presentation of the information in the case? And is the case short and well organized? Is it containing only relevant information? Is the case long with multiple media, such as writing, videos, websites, databases? Look at the appendices, look at all the extra information that's included. So here, the student is going to sort through, prioritize, identify any missing or relevant information, and organize and structure the data. So this is a much more challenging case. For example, if the complexity and the volume of information is higher versus less, and you simply specify the relevant missing information. We don't ever want to trick the students. We want to make sure that with all the information in the case is included in order to perform the analytical and conceptual frameworks. So now that we spoke a little bit about the case dimension, the 3D dimension, next we're going to jump into case writing. So to begin your even case writing journey, you need to understand what type of case are you going to write. Are you going to write a field case, a published source case, or a general experience case? Now, for this competition, we are looking for submissions in field and published sources. So a field-based case is based on interviews that you have had with the company, and it does require a consent to use form. This is available on our resource page, and make sure that you have that conversation with the company ahead of time so that they are aware that you are going to be sharing this as a submission and then future as possibly a publication within Ivey Business School, Ivey Publishing, and AUC. On published sources, you require many citations. So this is based on resources available to the public. And so our published sources require CMOS, and that's Chicago Manual Style 18 citations. Again, those citation guidelines are available on the website, and I'll show you where. But these cases cannot be disguised, and they cannot actually add any personal feelings or connections to it. Whereas in the field-based case, you are able to add comments and figures. And general experience, this is where authors, particularly faculty, write about their own experience within the industry. So make sure you choose the type of case that you are writing, because there's no such thing as mixing the cases. You got to choose between a field case and a published source case. One thing that we always talk about is what makes a great case. So we have these 6 points, and these 6 points are very important in order to make a great case. So once we start with this is the decision point, and we'll talk about the opening paragraph in quite depth here, but definitely your decision point. It needs to be clearly outlined in relation to the case dilemma. So it's your who, what, when, where, and how. It needs to be relevant. So learning about a real business that students can relate to. And you as students writing this case for the competition are more than knowledgeable of what is relevant to you, what do you want to see in the classroom. And then I think this is why it's such an exciting perspective to have students write cases, because you're writing content that you want to see within the classroom, within the MENA region. Is it versatile? So can it be used over multidimensional topics or issues? So for example, can strategy and operations pick this case up? And the objectives. Although you're not completing and writing your teaching note yet, you do need to think about the teaching and learning objectives that are going to be the outcome of that decision point. And that is part of that conceptual way of thinking and the dimension of your case. Your data, is there data are your exhibits clearly laid out? Is there more data that you can add? Does the company that you're talking to right now have the ability to provide a large data set? This is all something that's very important in including and making sure that all data is there and engaging. And as kind of said at the start of this, is that you are the student writing this case. Therefore, this needs to be an engaging and compelling story with issues that you are interested in. So you might ask, how do we begin even thinking about writing and case writing? So we go through a 3-phase case writing process typically. And I'll very quickly speak to the 3 case writing process. The first is, think about maybe a case triangle or a case origin. Lay everything out for yourself to help you understand, what do I need? What don't I have? Where do I need to include information? So what is my decision point? What are my key learning objectives? Who am I talking to in the business? Or what information am I pulling from published sources? If it is I'm going to a business, who's that initial contact that I'm speaking to? What's the case focus choices and what's the case plan? What does my case look like? And we'll speak to the case outline in just a bit. The other one to think about, so this is the case triangle. So think about your theory, business situation, and learning objectives. Write down your case name, your date, your case focus, your course, your class. Then think about the conceptual framework, articles and chapters, your decision issue and your maker and your time. So pick that time and place that you're going to speak to things. Your learning objectives, what are those few learning objectives? What is that class discussion questions what are going to look like? In order to have a complete case, you need to include these so that you know that the information in the case, there's nothing missing in there. And what are my key contacts? So phase 2 of the case writing process is your data collection and your rough draft and your preliminary teaching note. Again, your focus right now is not yet the teaching note, but you need to start thinking about what your decision points are and what the concepts are going to be. But this is where it gets really fun and it could happen very quickly. You've collected all your data, you've collected all your interviews, you've collected all your information if it's public sources. Start organizing that in a way to make clear your decision point. Write a rough draft, begin writing that and editing and editing and editing to get to the final phase of what we call the case revision and case teaching and writing. Now, this phase may happen a little bit later on and when you connect with an author and probably after submission to the competition. But remember that this is what you will want to do. You will want to write a full in-depth teaching note with the faculty that you have and make any case revisions that are required, especially after a class test. So those two first phases are very important for you in order to make a successful case. So we're going to move into the case outline. So one thing here is that to think about the opening paragraph. The opening paragraph, again, it introduces the protagonist and the decision point. The next part of the case outline needs to talk about the organization background. So here we talk about, it provides a history possibly about the company, the industry itself, if it's more complex, such as an airline industry is extremely complex. In order to make decisions, you need to make a little bit of reference to that particular industry. Maybe you're making reference to products, services, and structure and the competition. The area of interest. So this is where it begins to introduce the concepts related to the subject area as part of your opening paragraph. Your case decision. So this explores the dilemma facing the protagonist. It provides a detailed discussion of the main case issue and options. If needed, and if you feel that it is going to be high on the analytical and conceptual dimensions, you may want to include alternatives. So this is where it modulates that case difficulty. So you may introduce other considerations or implementation considerations. And then last but not least, you want to speak to the conclusion. So this restates the decision with relevant tasks or deadlines. This isn't a copy and paste of the opening paragraph. What you're doing is restating the decision and you're telling the students how to move, how to action forward. So let's move into the opening paragraph, one of the most important aspects of case writing. And definitely when submitting your cases, this is something that many are going to be looking at to see how strong is your opening paragraph. So we'll speak to the why, the checklist, and move into a bit more there. So the opening paragraph, this is the lens to the case. The opening paragraph, as you can read here, it identifies the decision maker, so who, and it is important to state who the person is. Is it John Smith, and what their position is? Are they a manager? Are they a director? As many of you, and just going back to the relevant aspect of making a great case, many of you may not become a CEO and may not have the ambition to become a CEO. Some of you may start as a manager, some of you may start as a director. So we need cases in all aspects. So think about, maybe this is the perfect case for a manager to make this decision, or the perfect case for a director to make this decision. We then move into the decision, issue, problem, or opportunity. And we say the decision, the issue, the problem, or the opportunity, because not every case is based on some sort of, it just happened now and I have to figure this out ASAP. It may be a opportunity that the company sees and that you want to write about, and that they see, well, I might be able to acquire the X company. It might be a problem or an issue within the company, but a decision needs to be made. So making sure that you're framing your opening paragraph around that. It's also very important to add a time and date in the case. So not just a year, but also a month. And if the case decision is very important to make a decision the very next day or within a week, then even the timing. So it is today for myself at 7:22 a.m. in London, Ontario. That's going to be very different as you're sitting maybe in Qatar, as I saw, and that decision that I made, and maybe it's a PR decision that needs to be made. So thinking about your timing, this is crucial and very important. The other part of this is think about COVID. So if I'm writing a case based on January 2020, that company is making a very different decision than based on April 2020. So this is why time is so important in the case, in the decision. And then we don't include anything else after that date. Anything after that date gets included into the teaching note. The other part of this is the name of the organization and the location. These all seem like very basics, but believe it or not, it's really hard to include all these in the opening paragraph and make it still engaging for the students. But why is the name of the organization and the location so important? Well, really thinking about this is that think about Amazon and the many different distribution areas that they have, and it's a global company. So where are we talking about? Is it Amazon here for myself in Canada, or is it Amazon in Europe or many other parts of the region? So including that location. And as all of you may know, there's different cultural aspects to that as well. So thinking about where that location is and how that business might act in different ways. And then we think about the event that triggered the decision. So what is it and why are we writing this case? Why did you have that aha moment to say, yes, this is a good decision point? And then think about the time frame to make a decision. So is there an urgency to making that decision? So for example, if it's a PR, a public relations decision that needs to be made because I'm sponsoring X NBA player and they have come out and there's a huge scandal. So I, as maybe Adidas that's sponsoring this NBA player, I need to make a decision very quickly as a public relations individual. That is thinking about your time frame. So what you're going to present in your case is very different than maybe I am Adidas and I'm deciding what NBA player I want to sponsor. And so you have a longer time frame to make that decision. So making sure that as you're writing your decision point, you're thinking about those key aspects. So the opening paragraph, this allows professors and students to read the rest of the case with a focused perspective. What am I going to talk about next? We also say that opening paragraphs can be written quickly, read quickly, and changed quickly. And this is very important because don't get stuck on your opening paragraph. Continue to edit it. Continue to think, okay, does this make sense? Challenge yourself around it. Does this answer my conceptual aspect of it? Does it have everything around that? It can be used with the organization to establish the topic and the scope of the case. And the case writer should finalize a draft of the opening paragraph before more work is done on the case. Again, going back to that focus that you have on the opening paragraph, if you don't have a finalized or near finalized opening paragraph, it's going to be really hard for you to move on with the other case outline. So we're going to speak to a checklist, and it is 11 points. And these are super important when you're going through. And some of this is going to be repetitive, but it is quite fascinating how hard it is to write a very strong opening paragraph. So a checklist is a way for us to evaluate and say, okay, do we have what we need? It also is a way to say, okay, this needs to have this essential information. And it also tells you to choose one decision point, not many, but one decision point. And so again, for readers, it's intended to say, is the content correct? And what is in the case? And it also allows readers to question alternative approaches to the same situation. So let's jump into the checklist. So number 1, decision maker. Is it identified or named by the name and the position? And so as we had said, the webinar is going to be shared. So go back to this and use this checklist to say yes or no to this. If you hit no to this, make sure you go back and include this information. Is the time of the case clear? So when is this happening? Is the location of the company clear? Is the decision, problem, or issue clear? Is the decision or problem appropriate and sufficiently interesting for the case for use in case? Going back to that relevancy. Is this relevant for me? Is this engaging? Is this a good conversation to have in a classroom and potentially think about? Is the storyline cut appropriate with respect to the actual case? Would moving it forward or backward result in a better case? So for example, going back to the decision about a public relations director and making a statement about an NBA player, if I had just heard potential rumors, that is a different case and a different decision that needs to be made than maybe the next day that there's already a scandal and it's in the press, and now I need to react on this. So you can see how changing where you decide to cut that story is going to make the difference between what that decision is and what you need to do and how you're going to make it. And as part of that, you're going to run into the decision frame cut. So this is also going to tell you how long you have to make that decision. So if I need to quickly make a decision on a scandal that NBA player has made, I don't have a lot of time to sit on that. However, if there's rumors about this, I may contact that NBA player first. And so conceptually, there may be different things here that I will speak to versus others. And so making sure that the difference between where that storyline cut is versus where I need to make and how quickly I need to make that decision. The other part of this is, what is the action trigger? So what is it that got me thinking and is the decision point? So for example, when we are thinking about the NBA player again and the sponsorship, so I heard about a scandal. So that is your action trigger. That is what happened. That's the thing I'm going to say, okay, this is why this is really interesting and I need to speak to it. And now we are going to talk about a PR strategy. So maybe this is a communications course that this case would be written for. Also, how complex is the case intended to be? So is this a conversation around communications, or am I going to add alternatives which are going to modulate my difficulty here and say, and the NBA player has also broken a contract. And so as part of this, we might be speaking to a different point of complexity here in the case. Checklist in terms of the disguise. So when you are writing a published source case, we don't accept disguises. Reason being, because it's based on published sources. So we require full citations that are from the initial aspect of where you first received that information. So go back to the original source. Now, when it comes to an interview case or a field case, this is where a disguise may be appropriate. Some company members may say, you know what, yes, I'm happy to write this case with you. However, we don't want people to be written about or included within the case. So feel free to include these. Now, this does tend to go from what is the hardest thing to disguise, the easiest thing to disguise to the hardest thing to disguise. So our organization in name, some companies such as Apple are going to be very hard to disguise. However, a small company such as a small business that is operating within one area or maybe one city and is one sole sort of brick and mortar, you may be able to disguise their name. And, instead of calling it ABC, you might call it XYZ. Now, make sure you keep the relevancy of where it is located. So we don't want a case that's going to be, for example, westernized when it is located in the region. So making sure that the disguise is appropriate. Same with the individuals, the people's names. We wouldn't want a case written about the MIA region based and then all of a sudden disguised with a John Smith. Unless, of course, that individual is maybe British or Canadian or any of the Western sort of aspect of it. But making sure you stay true to who that individual is. If I'm a woman leading that company, keep me as a woman leading that company and choose a name that is appropriate for that region. Again, disguising the date. This is where it gets a little bit tricky based on your decision point and what is happening in the world today. So as many of us are sitting here today and there's lots going on, when thinking about that date, how is that going to impact the business, and especially small businesses, for example? How are my decisions as a small business today different than they were, November 2023? So making sure that you are being mindful around what is happening in the world when you choose a date, and if you are just going to disguise a date. Location again. So maybe it's a small rural town and you want to make the company and the company wants to be disguised into another small rural town. That seems very appropriate. However, we're not going to bring a small company and a small business from a small rural town into a large city. That's where the disconnect happens, and then the decision point isn't strong. Financial and numerical data are actually quite often very easy to disguise in a sense that you can multiply it by 1.3, divide it by 0.7, so on and so forth. It's easy to disguise that information. What is crucial here is that you're not disguising the information and creating a $10 million business into a $100 million business. So making sure that the company size still stays the same. And this is also part of who's working, so your human resources for you. And then and product and industry. These two are extremely hard to disguise, especially as students and maybe writing your very first case or just starting this journey. I highly suggest you not disguising a product or an industry. As you can imagine, disguising, for example, a car dealer or a car manufacturer, this would be extremely hard to disguise, other than if you're writing about operations and maybe you'll speak to Coca-Cola bottles. But again, you need to create a disguise and not something else. So think about these disguises when talking about a disguise with the company involved. And then last but not least is the case title appropriate? It seems very simple, but is the title to the point? Does it include the name of the organization? And it should be 6 words or less to include a keywords that best describe the case. You never want to tell anyone what is happening or what's the outcome of that case in your case title. So for example, I wouldn't say ABC, the case of embezzlement funds, because what am I saying at that point? I'm saying that there's going to be embezzlement funds as part of my decision point. So leaving some sort of aspect to and thought behind that title. These guidelines are always not possible, but you want to ensure that the title is easy to remember and find it when doing a search. This is also what's going to help you stand out in that case competition. Do you have a catchy title? Do you have a strong opening paragraph? So again, here's the checklist all in one page. So when you go back to this webinar and you say, okay, I'm only going to look at one thing, this is what you want to look at is when you're thinking about an opening paragraph. So the storyline cut has been made within the right time. The decision frame cut has been made within the right time. What is the action trigger? So what is that important thing that said, okay, this is why I'm writing about it. This is what they need to decide. Is the decision maker identified by name in the position? Is the time of the case clear? Is the location of the organization identified? Is the issue, the decision, or the problem or dilemma interesting to use in the case? If you sat there and read this opening paragraph as a student, would you say, yes, I want to learn about this case, or is there opportunities to make changes there? Is the case disguised, and what extent? Is the case title and the names appropriate? And what's the proper position within the case difficulty cube? And when I say case difficulty cube, I'm going back to the conceptual, analytical, and presentation framework. So thinking about how hard this case is going to be and what is the student's task at hand. So that was a lot of information about the opening paragraph, but it is crucial to have this in order to speak to the opening, to write a strong case. So you're thinking about it, what makes a great case, your opening paragraph, what does that outline look like? And as much as we are not writing the teaching note yet here, we do need to speak a little bit about the teaching notes because it does need to connect later on. So the teaching note is the opportunity for you to express your views in the analysis of the case. So this is where you're going to say, okay, this is what the company did. And I do think that if they used this framework, they would have been able to make better decisions. Now, remember with the case, there is no right answer. It is how best to use that concept or theory in order to tell the story and to gather the information and to make the analysis to have the best choice at that point in time available to that manager, to the director, to the CEO. A teaching note is also a quality tool. So quite often we say it's written in parallel with the case and not afterwards. So do start putting little points down for what you think might be questions that you want to ask students, other students that would be using this case in a classroom. It also validates the proper data is available in the case for the students to address the assignment questions. So did you add enough information in terms of the data, or is there something missing here? And it also ensures that your case is complete. Teaching notes can provide the instructor with additional information and be used in case discussion. And teaching notes should never be distributed to students. Funny enough, we're sitting here saying we're talking to many students, but when we write teaching notes, we don't share these with our students because we want an engaging conversation where you do the work of the analysis and we have a strong, engaging conversation. So speaking a little bit to the case outline, and this is something that is available on our website to help do a copy and paste. So maybe later when you're after submitting to the competition and you're ready to engage your faculty member to help you write a teaching note, this is a tool that you can say, hey, I've already begun thinking about this. This is what I've got. So it starts with the synopsis, the learning objectives, the position and course, and the relevant readings. For the relevant readings, it's not just about relevant readings for the student, for the faculty, it's really both. And does it come before the classroom discussion? Does it come post classroom discussion? So giving different options to think about relevant readings. It is also our assignment question. So a list of our assignment questions would go here. The teaching plan, what does that classroom look like? And the analysis, this is the largest part of the teaching note, is what are sort of the answers to that aspect. So once you're done writing your case and you've submitted it to the case competition, then start thinking about, okay, let's start writing a teaching note so that you can complete it and submit it for publication. So that is a lot of information in and around opening paragraph, the case outline. I'm going to speak very quickly to Ivey Publishing. When I say quickly, I'm going to skim very quickly through this. So we are the leader in providing business case studies with a global perspective. We're the second largest producer and distributor of business cases in the world. You can see some of our stats below. And one of those that we have is great partnerships, such as with AUC here and many other co-brands. We also have many different languages that our cases are available in. And we look forward to many different partnerships that we continue to support and sponsor and help. And so this is why it's such an important aspect of this student-led case writing competition, because we really have this ability now to say, this is what students want, and this is what students want to write. So last but not least, and before we can move into a question before we move to NG, that's going to help to speak to submission guidelines, here are a few resources. So take a look at our submission guidelines on our website. This is something that you can go through and say, okay, have I done everything I need in order to submit? This is different from the submission guidelines that are provided for the case writing workshop itself, the case writing competition itself. These are submission guidelines to help guide the case writing. So is the case written in the past tense, for example? There's a teaching note layout, which I just had shared with you, the case writing videos that will help hopefully inspire some ideas. And it does help you start thinking less about your first time writing about decision points. The consent to use is available there as well. So if you are going to engage with a company, they are required to use that consent to use. And I highly recommend that you share that very early on with them so that you have it signed and available. Or if you're writing a published source case, citation guidelines. So looking at the citation guidelines, this is a in-depth and really helps tell you how to cite properly. So I will stop there and I think over to Laura or Angie.
Angie, there you go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Violetta, for such a great, I would say, session. And it's like a mini workshop. You have tried to make it as interactive as possible. I'm sure if this was in person, things would have been totally different. So for everyone who's joining us, I think Violetta gave us like the best practices. Don't feel overwhelmed. I can imagine this could be a little bit of overwhelming for the first start. However, just kick it off, have a case idea, and you have already all shared with us case ideas. They're beautiful ideas that could be further worked upon. Use the guidelines that Violetta has shared. You will be sharing the recording of this session so you can get over the slides again. You can cross-check against what Violetta has asked you to double-check. For the teaching notes, we do not request that teaching notes will be submitted at the first step. It will only be requested from the winners. And I will just get to this now in a few minutes that everybody will be a winner. So don't overwhelm yourself at the stage. However, just keep it at the back of your mind that there is something called teaching notes. This is what it is used for. These are the questions that are asked to other students who are going to be using the case. So now focus on your case idea, how to develop it further. We'll be providing feedback by next week because there are some case ideas that are not focused on the MEA region. So please make sure again that we are having a case that is based on, doesn't have to be a company, it could be any type of organization, an NGO or whatever. However, it has to be placed in the MEA region. Now, the submission guidelines, as Violetta has shared, there are case writing tips, videos, and everything. And we'll just be asking that you share with us your case and abstract by Jan 15th. By or before Jan 15th, you have to submit your case. And then we'll take a couple of weeks for filtration. And the final announcement of the top 3 winners will be on February 5th. The first winner will be awarded $1,000, the second $750, and the third $250. All of the 3 winners will be requested to further develop full teaching notes, and they have to co-work with a faculty member in order to have their case published in the AUC School of Business, El-Khazindar Business Research and Case Center, and Ivey collections. We have partnership agreements with Ivey in which these cases will be published. However, even if you're not a winner, you have still a chance that you can further develop your case and you develop your teaching notes with a faculty member and again get a chance to have the case published. So in all cases, you will be a winner. I just want to have like a quick overview from where you're joining us. So if you can kindly just write in the chat box, where are you joining us from? Because we have had registrations, I would say, from all over the region. So I just want to make sure that everyone is presented in the webinar. Egypt.
India, Ghana,
We have Tunisia, Ghana, India,
Manchester.
Manchester, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, India again. India,
United States
Morocco,
as well.
United
Okay,
Pakistan.
perfect.
Philadelphia,
So-
yeah.
So for
Pakistan,
everyone
Morocco.
joining us from the MEA region and outside of the MEA region, we are looking forward again to receiving your submissions about the MEA region for this specific competition. And please feel free at any point in time to email us at kcc@aucegypt.edu for any inquiries you have. We also have put for you in the chat box, we have created a special link on our website for the competition for further details. Ivy has also thankfully done the same. Laura, if you can also please share in the chat box. So please feel free to go through these links thoroughly. You will get all the details needed. You will have the submission guidelines. You will have all the forms needed, the consent for publication, the copyrights and everything. And still, if you have any further inquiries, kindly let us know and we'll be there for your support. I think we have a few questions in the chat box. Okay. There's a question, can a case be written about an economic case like inflation? Violetta, the question is for you.
Absolutely, a case can be written about an economic
Exactly.
inflation. Absolutely. Just make sure you have a strong decision point and you're choosing that one particular decision. What about that though?
Okay, another question is, if the name is disguised, they still need to have the consent form signed. If the name is the only thing that's disguised and the company is still as is, yes, you will still need to have the consent for publication. If you are disguising the company name, however, this I would say makes the case a bit of less engaging because it's totally different when I give you a case about, I would say, Swivel in the region versus ABC Transportation Company. So the less disguised the case is, the more engaging it is for anyone who reads it. They're asking, is it possible to have a sample case study so that they can get into the format of the case?
NJ, I think
Yes.
we can do that. I think we can,
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, let's pick a few cases that have strong decision points too, so that and that are short. One thing I did not mention here is thinking about length of case. So usually with Ivey Publishing, we say 6 pages of body text, no longer than that. We tend to see 6 to 8 pages, but definitely 6 pages are sort of that strong point.
Okay, perfect. There is a very interesting question based on our experience of receiving case submissions. If we can provide some typical errors that usually happen. I will share from my side and leave it for Violetta. Usually, I would say the common errors would be there is no protagonist that's clearly in the case, or the opening paragraph is not written in the format of an opening paragraph, but rather just like an abstract and they go immediately to the case. The case is not in the past tense, although Violetta has stressed on this. But this is from my side, I would say like more of the common typical errors that we receive in case submissions. Violetta, would you like to add anything?
I completely agree and cannot emphasize more on that opening paragraph. And that is why I spent so much time on it, is how strong that opening paragraph is and that lack of information in it and throughout the case. And then the only other part I would add to that is that we see quite often is that there's information in the case that happened after the decision date. So just making sure you are very hard on that date and saying, nope, no more information added from here on out.
Okay, perfect. There's a question if PhD students can join. Yes, this competition is open for undergraduate students, graduate students, and PhD candidates. Okay, the last date of registration for the competition, that was supposed to be actually yesterday. However, if you have not yet registered, please contact us at KCC and we will try to sort this out. If the case is developed from secondary data sources and the company refuses to sign the consent, shall we still try to get the consent? I think if it's only from secondary data resources and it's published, publicly available resources, you do not have to have a signed consent. It's only when you do primary research and you get data from the company exclusive for you that's not publicly available, that you will have to get a signed consent.
And one thing you don't want to do is write a case with an interview case where you're interviewing the company and then have to change it to published sources. It's extremely, extremely hard. And this is why sharing that consent to use really early on is very important. And that consent to use is really only one page. It's quite easy to convince the company to get it signed.
Okay, there's a question from Ghana. If the case that they're currently working on is a field case, will that require reference since all data were collected from a primary source?
So what is required is any references that are outside of the company. So if it is about the company, then the references are not required because the company can sign off for those for that information within the case. However, if you are including any alternatives, or if you're including or comparing and contrasting to an industry or to another company, you're going to use information based on that other company. That is required for sign off. This is where the caveat is. So let's say the company has insider knowledge and they have insider knowledge about the competition and they're going to speak to it and write to it. So as long as they have spoken to that competition, that does not require resource secondary citations.
Okay, there's a question. How would we know that our case idea has not been done before?
Search the website. So we at Ivey Publishing not only supply our own cases, but we also distribute many different collections. And so begin with simply doing a search. Search the website, go to iveypublishing.ca, take a look, put in keywords. So if it's going to be the concept that you're thinking about, so Porter's Five Forces, you're going to see a lot around that. Thinking about the company, so I would start with the company and see, has there been a case written about that company? If there's 0 results for that company, then go ahead and write that case.
And if you just do like a very basic internet search, you would even find it if it's mentioned elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Can we change the idea of our case study? Yes. For those who have already registered and you have submitted your case ideas, you can still change it, but please email this to us because we want to confirm that the case is based on the MEA region and it is applicable for the competition.
That makes me excited, Angie, because that makes me think that they were thinking about the opening paragraph and like, it wasn't as strong.
Okay.
We had a couple of questions about the presentation that Violetta had, if it will be shared or not. So will you be able to share the presentation?
Sure, yes. I'm happy to share the slides so that they can come back, especially to that checklist.
Okay, perfect. We'll share it with the recording for the webinar with all the participants.
Wonderful.
Okay, another question, if they're going to be receiving a confirmation to their case idea, how are we going to be doing it, Trine? I think if there is a concern about the case, this is definitely when you will be contacted. If not, I think that would be fine.
Yes, we'll be sharing by tomorrow with those who have the ideas that are not based on MEA in the MEA region. So we'll send them an email so that they can have the chance to submit another case idea. Otherwise, we'll send an email for everyone else that their case idea is good enough to continue with, and they can proceed with submitting their cases until January 14th.
Okay. Another question, if there are any preferred topics. From my side, I would say any topic is a preferred topic. Definitely, yes. Violetta?
Absolutely, because we're talking about the MEA region, and I think that's what's really key here. And there is a lack of representation within cases about the MEA region. So any topic is very interesting.
Another question, if they will be using interviews, what's the maximum number of companies to interview?
1, because you're only writing 1 decision point. So you're engaging with 1 company and you're having many interviews with many employees within that company. If it's a small business, it might just be with the 1 business owner. But what you need to come in and when you're going into that, into those interviews is don't start with hounding them on questions. Sometimes what's really interesting is just asking them to tell you their story and then leading that into, okay, this is where I want to go. obviously we don't want them to say everything and anything, but engage with that one company, a member, and then from there decide, do I need to have an interview with maybe the marketing manager? Maybe I need to have an interview with the HR representative. At that point, have those conversations, but only one company, because you're only writing about one company and you're choosing one protagonist. So who's the decision maker? So I myself am making a decision based on this, and in what time and place. So that goes back to our opening paragraph.
Okay, someone is saying that they have been trying to access the published cases, but they keep asking for a faculty profile. Yes, this is the case because these cases are used by faculty members. So they're asking for faculty profile to get access and for the teaching notes. However, what we meant to make sure that the case has not been published before is just do a Google search with the company name, the keywords, and the case idea, and if you would find it in Ivey or elsewhere. And for the sample, we'll be sharing a couple of case studies as a sample. However, we could not really provide you with total access for the full database because this is copyrighted for Ivey, and this is used by educators for educational purposes.
And on the website, you can see the title and a short abstract for students. So that gives you an opportunity to from there just to decide, has this case been written about or not?
Okay, there's also one question. Tips for a winning case.
Tips for winning cases. For myself, I really look at the opening paragraph, and this is why I spent so much time on this. It has to be an engaging, the case is all about the decision point, because that is how you're going to have that engaging conversation in the classroom. And then the other tip is make sure it's based in the MIA region. If it's not based in the MIA region, then it's not going to win the competition. It might be a very engaging and great case, but you know, making sure that it is based in the MIA region. And also don't look at large companies. They have all been written about. You know, you have this wonderful advantage of connecting and thinking about where you are or where you potentially want to start thinking about writing about, and that interest. And so bring that aspect into the case.
I think the competition has stimulated interest in other areas because we have 3 questions about, are you going to be extending this to Southeast Asia? Is this only for MIA or IMIA? So I think for this specific competition, for the time being, it is for the MIA. Please, we apologize for this. However, this could be considered later, and maybe Ivey could consider expanding, or we can have it in an emerging markets or like in other contexts. However, we highly, again, encourage you, even if you are in India or in other places in Asia, in Southeast Asia, for example, and you want to have like a case study based on public resources, please feel free to join the competition. We'd love to have your submission. Yes, if it's company, it's in Tunisia, definitely this is from the MIA region. Yes. Just do a quick Google search, what are the countries included in the MIA region, and you will find plenty of them, and you will know which will go. Okay, for those who are asking about what are the steps to participate in the competition, yes, you submit the form, your registration form to the competition with your team if you are more than 1 member, and the case idea, and this should have been done by yesterday. Please, if not, please make sure to do this today urgently. You work on this case idea, you have till January 15th, before or by January 15th, before midnight time, Cairo time, you have to make sure that you have submitted your full case with the abstract, fully revised, proofread, and edited. And I cannot stress this enough. It has to be please proofread and edited. This is a main feature for a winning case. And then by February 5th, we will be announcing the top 3 winners and also asking all other case submissions if they would like to further work on their teaching notes to be eligible for publication in the KCC Ivey joint collection. I think we have time for just one more question. Okay, if we're trying to reach a company, that means whom should we be trying to reach? This totally depends on your case idea. So if it's an HR idea, maybe the HR manager, the HR director would be the person in charge. If it's a financial case, probably the CFO or the finance manager. If it's more of a strategy case, then maybe it will be the general manager or the CEO. If it's a marketing case, it could be the marketing manager, the marketing director, or the chief commercial officer. So this totally depends on, again, what is going to be your case focus and your case idea, and the person in charge who could be the protagonist for such a case. Okay, I think that's it, and we're exactly on time. I would like definitely to deeply thank Ivey team. Laura, thank you, Violetta, for the extremely insightful session. Thanks to Shireen Munir from KCC for organizing this. Thanks to all of our attendees and participants. We look forward to our case submissions. We're very much excited about this competition, I would say even more than you are. We're looking forward to receiving amazing cases from your side and reading them, shortlisting, coming with the winners. And again, as I said, everybody could be a winner. If you develop your teaching notes with a faculty member, you're all invited to publish in the KCC Ivey collection. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, and looking forward to receiving your submissions. Please, here is the email, kcc@aucegypt.edu. Feel free to email us if you have any inquiries, and we'll be there to support you. Thank you so much for participating and your interest. Thank you. Have a great day.
Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck. Best of luck.